Hi everybody and welcome back to my channel. My name's Amelia and today we're going to be talking about the books that I hate or hated but still love. Yeah. So I absolutely love doing these videos about like the books that I loved and like apparently now about books that I hate. But I thought this would be a little bit different because I feel like I see a lot of people posting about books that they don't like on BookTube or posting about books that they recommend or giving like just general reviews, but nobody says that nobody shares the books that they hated to read and then they looked back on it and thought, okay, actually that was a pretty good book. So I thought that this would be something different, and no, I'm not going to be part of the BookTube community, but as a writer, I absolutely love to analyze literature and to talk about it, so that's what I intend to do with this video and probably with future videos as well. Alright, so I'm sure that a lot of you have probably read books, and like in school especially, and you were like, this book absolutely sucks, I hate everything about it, and I don't want to read it. And then you might have kept that same opinion later on, or you might have not. I'll be honest, when it comes to reading now I have choice, so if I don't like a book I can just stop, but I kind of feel like I should press through even when I don't like a book, just so that way I can complete it and finish it, mostly because finishing things feels really good, but also because from what I've learned, it's that literary-wise, or in a literary way, books tend to convey so much meaning and tend to be so impactful on the world of writing and the world of literature, and I've kind of gone back and realized that some of the books that I hated to read were just really good books. Like, they just were. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and jump into this, and maybe you'll get an idea of what I mean by hating to read them, but really loving what they end up representing later on in life. So yeah. So the first book that I hated to read was The Fountainhead by Ayn Rand. First of all, this is a colossal book. These notes are not notes about how great the story was. I literally had to section off parts of it that I would read so that way I could finish it on time for class. That's what this is. There are 3 different parts of the book, and then I sectioned off in the pink like what parts I was going to read, and then the orange parts are, I think, important scenes, I think. So yeah, but this book was terrible to read. I hated it so much. I read every single word, every single page, and it's interesting because I was assigned to read this book before my junior year of high school, and we had a test on it when we got into class, because that's how school works, and I remember hating it. It was so long, and I hated all the characters, and there were too many monologues, and I just thought it was, I mean, nothing happened, it seemed. Like, things happened, but it seemed kind of unimportant to me. I had two of my best friends at the time absolutely loved this book and really related to some of the characters, which says a lot about them, but you know. But yeah, I did not enjoy reading this colossus. It was terrible. But when I got a little older, probably in my gap year, I found out that Emma Watson had said on her Instagram or some video or something somewhere that one of her favorite books was The Fountainhead, and I could not possibly understand why anybody would choose this as their favorite book. I was like, Emma, you're crazy. I did a little research and I kind of came across the themes that exist in The Fountainhead again, and I realized that they're actually pretty interesting. I mean, the focus on the individual and just that kind of culture of individualism, and I forget the exact word, so I had to do a little research because I kind of forgot what objectivism meant. It's been a while, alright? But so the idea of individualism is really, really prominent in this book. You kind of follow the main character, and everything he does is kind of out of need for the self. He doesn't really do things for others, it's all for his own progression, and a lot of the characters are focused solely on themselves, but it's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, it can be a bad thing, but it's also more focused on just the individualistic culture. But I'm going to read this piece. It's from LitCharts.com, because I looked up Fountainhead themes. So, individualism. The Fountainhead is an exploration of Ayn Rand's philosophy of objectivism. Rand described objectivism as the concept of man as a heroic being with his own happiness as the moral purpose of his life, with productive achievement as his noblest activity and reason as his only absolute. So by this, you know, it just means that more or less the characters are focused on themselves and self-progression. And honestly, I didn't like that because I thought it was very selfish as I read it, but going back and really looking at some of the themes in this book when it comes to being selfish and falling in love, and then also working as an individual and just American culture especially, it just seemed really prominent, and I started tying it to American culture. But I thought it was a very interesting thing to kind of dive into more, and as I got older I kind of started appreciating the themes and kind of appreciated what Rand was trying to convey, even though I think she kind of considered Howard Roark to be like the ideal man, and I think he was kind of a jerk and I hated him, but hey, to each their own. Okay, so the next book that I read and hated and have a new appreciation for, I suppose, is Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. I don't know how to pronounce his name. Aldous Huxley? I don't know. Again, it's a shorter book, which was much easier to read, but I read this the summer between my junior and senior year, read every single word, hated every single bit of it. Why did I hate it? I hated all of the raunchy sexualness that exists in this book. I just did. I was, you know, a 17-year-old and I thought I was classier than this, so I thought this was garbage. But there's, in the book, the people are made from bottles, pretty much. They're made from chemicals, and people don't really feel love, but they do feel arousal. And so sex is kind of a leisure activity. It's not anything that you do out of passion or when you're in love with someone, you just kind of do it, because why not? They have basically like an orgasmic theater where you go and watch porn or something and then you feel orgasms. I don't know how that works. But you know, one thing I really hated was the continuation of them going orgy, porgy, Ford and fun, something, I don't know. It stuck. But all in all, that's not what this book's about. It's not about sex. That is kind of a feature to depict their society. So this book has a lot of heavy themes on what it is to be human and kind of where society is going to be going. People don't really have a lot of happiness, and in order to feel happy and elated, they take soma. People consider anybody who has babies the natural way. They're savages, and it's just a really interesting take on like classism and like social status, and like just it's really interesting. And a lot of their focus on like their industry and stuff is based on Ford because of the assembly line, and kind of portrays the people as like machines rather than real people. And I think it's a really interesting thing to analyze, but I absolutely hated reading it, so you know. So another book that I hated to read, but I did this by choice, this was all on me, but I hated reading it, was Asymmetry by Lisa Halliday. So unlike the other two books where I talked mostly about their themes, I'm not really going to do that with this one. I'm going to talk about the structure of the book because it was super unique. I read this book a long time ago, and I wrote a review for it on my blog when I was documenting all the books that I read every month. And when it came to this book, I didn't want to write a bad review, so I just kind of made like not like a false review, but I only talked about the things that I found interesting. And I'm kind of going to repeat that here, but I also want you to know that I just did not like it. I thought the plot moved really slowly. It was really, I don't know, it felt kind of disconnected, but that's an artistic kind of thing actually when I look at it. Again, all in hindsight, this book is really good. But when I was reading it, I was very confused. I was jumping from part to part. I wasn't really attached to any of the characters, and I thought they were making stupid decisions, and I really felt like nothing was happening pretty much the entire book. And maybe that's just a product of me reading too much fantasy and like action novels. Probably. But the thing I loved about this was the way it was written. I don't exactly know how to describe this style, but it felt so contemporary and modern to me, and I really admired it. Again, the book does jump between perspectives, and it has a few different parts that follow different stories that all end up like connecting. But what I really loved was like in each part, the way that it was told, again, it kind of bounced back and forth, and it was kind of a disassociated view of what was happening, but I really admired that. And so, yeah, as much as I hated to read it, and it was still really good. One other thing I really liked is that in this book, there's a lot of scenes where it's just dialogue back and forth. And I did a lot of exercises at school in college when it came to creative writing with that specific exercise where you just use dialogue, no dialogue tags, no paragraph, no description, just dialogue. And so there are a few scenes here where they do the same thing. And I thought that that was really interesting. I have only ever seen that in like short stories or like, you know, novels and stuff where people are really trying to be different, but this seemed to flow really well and I really appreciated that. Okay, so this one may come as a surprise to some people, but American Gods by Neil Gaiman. I love Neil Gaiman, and I express that a lot on this channel. I absolutely love his work, and I love the way he writes. It's just really dark and like mysterious. I just absolutely adore it. I did not enjoy reading this book. I read this book a while back. It was when I discovered Neil Gaiman, and I began reading this when I was still in high school living at my parents' house. And in all honesty, it's interesting. There's a lot of interesting themes, but at the time when I was reading it, I wasn't super in love with the characters, and I wasn't super in love with the writing style and how it was going on. There was a lot of cussing in it. It seemed raunchier and more R-rated than a lot of his stuff. I'm used to the eerie children's novel like Ocean at the End of the Lane, where, you know, you're following a little kid's perspective. There's not a lot of vulgar language and not a lot of vulgar themes either. Everything's kind of mysterious and weird, and I really like that. I really appreciate that, and I felt like with this, it was just really raunchy. I also ended up watching the TV show while I was reading this. I wouldn't watch an episode unless I had already read it, but oh my gosh, the TV show was worse. Much worse. Not to bash, like, whoever made it, and not to bash Neil Gaiman, but, like, I just didn't appreciate the show. I don't know, it was just too raunchy for me. I just didn't like that. I felt like they said fuck too many times, and, like, other things, like, it just, whatever. But with this, in hindsight, it's just a really interesting story. I mean, there is this tech kid, I don't remember very well. I should have done more research before I made this video, but I really wanted to make this video today. But there's this like tech kid, and he kind of represents the onset of technology and how people are like more engrossed in their, you know, smartphones than they are with each other and just life in general. And it kind of, this whole book's about how the old gods are dying and new gods are born. There's a god for highways and a god for tech and a god for, you know, Wi-Fi and stuff, the things that we worship now. Probably a god for YouTube, who knows? But all the old gods like Odin and Artemis and I don't know how to pronounce her name, Bastet, I don't know if that's right. It's an Egyptian god, Tot or Thoth or Toth, I don't know how you pronounce that name either, another Egyptian god. Basically all of the gods that you know from myth are fading because people aren't worshiping them and what they represent as much. And it's a really interesting story kind of about how the world is shifting. And I found Goodreads not too long ago. If you want to join me on Goodreads, links in the description, please. I need friends on Goodreads. I want to have conversations about books. But also, I found Neil Gaiman on there, and he was kind of going through and highlighting certain quotes from this book and really talking about them, which made me appreciate the book a little bit more and makes me kind of want to reread it, just because I feel like I'm a different person now, and maybe because of who I was then, I didn't appreciate it as much, and I think now I might have a different opinion. So we're going back to the classics again, because again, like I said in the beginning of this video, I was kind of forced to read certain books, and typically, if given the choice, I wouldn't finish a book that I hated. Again, these two were kind of exceptions, but this was because I was ultimately super bored, and this is because I love Neil Gaiman, so. But typically, if I don't like a book, I just kind of leave it. But yeah, so next one, Fahrenheit 451. I read this in the 8th grade. So keep in mind that these are the opinions of a 14-year-old memory, and the themes that I've seen of it since and the discussions I've had since, because my boyfriend recently read it, they're very different because, again, I was a 14-year-old. I didn't care. I actually think I didn't finish this book. I think I ended up skipping the last, like, 100 pages or something. I don't know. It was a lot because I just wanted to pass the test. I did pass the test, by the way. But yeah, so Fahrenheit 451, I hated the way that it was written at the time because I felt, again, like with the Fountainhead, it just dragged on. And I didn't really find the ideas very unique. I'm like, okay, they're burning books. Woo, like what does that matter? At the time, yeah, right? Here, whew, ideas that change, right? But I didn't really like the story because I just didn't really relate to Guy Montag, and I didn't relate to the weird girl with the milky skin. That's all I remember about her. And I didn't really appreciate the subtle intricacies and ideas that ended up becoming a reality. I mean, when Ray Bradbury wrote some of these scenes, I mean, he wrote about certain things and then later they became true. I mean, he talks about seashells that go in your ears and you can listen to music. And when I read this book, the only seashells that you can listen to that emit music are like wired headphones, and now we have AirPods. And I think about AirPods when I think about, yeah, I don't know, they're connected, that's my point. But also I think the biggest takeaway from this book is just the idea of burning books and kind of erasing history and erasing moments, I guess, from life because we are, you know, restricting what people can read. And I read this around the time that I was learning about World War II, and we read The Book Thief, and of course we talked about the book burnings then. And of course, that struck me because I was thinking, how could people burn books? But when I was reading this, it just seemed like fiction, and I didn't really connect the two because I was a 14-year-old and stupid. I really think I need to reread this. My boyfriend really enjoyed it, and he said that it had a lot of really heavy themes that I didn't pick up as a kid. So, another book that I read in my senior year that I didn't appreciate, and I feel like I should reread it, is The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks. I was not into nonfiction until this year. I was like, when I was a kid, I liked nonfiction, but you know, like those National Geographic magazines or those really tiny itty-bitty books about like a bird or a butterfly or something, like, or horse books, like just stuff that's really small and simple about animals or the rainforest or Egypt or something, but not like big novels. I did not appreciate nonfiction, so when I was assigned to read this, I didn't appreciate it because it seemed boring. I was like, I don't care about the statistics, I don't care about the numbers, I'm here for a good time, and this is not a good time. That's what I was thinking. And I really wish I would reread it because I feel like, from my memory, there were a lot of interesting story elements that I didn't even consider a story because I was so focused on it being nonfiction and the fact that I hated nonfiction, so I didn't appreciate the book. But from what I know about her disease and what I know about science and stuff, I mean, it's actually incredible, like, what happened, and it sucks that, you know, for so long, Henrietta Lacks never got any recognition for the fact that her cells are immortal and out there making a difference. Like, her and her family never got any credit for it, they never knew, and it's just insane. And I wish that I need to reread this at some point, but I wish I would have paid more attention in high school when it came to this book, because I feel like I would have had a better appreciation if I didn't just blatantly hate it because it was nonfiction. Alright, this last book, I wasn't really sure if I was going to include it. I almost included this on my favorite books that I've ever read or something, but I think I'm going to include it in this video, and that is Educated by Tara Westover. I really loved this book when I was reading it, so it's kind of weird to say books I hated but still loved. It was towards the middle and end of the book that I started doubting her story, and I read a lot of weird reviews, and like everybody seemed to have mixed opinions, and there was no proof that certain things happened, and it was very confusing. So towards the end of the book, I started to hate it, and I absolutely loved her story. I thought it was very well told, it was very easy to read, and it was very intriguing. And when I started seeing all these other opinions and like other book reviews on BookTube and stuff, I started to doubt her story and doubt her truth, and I started hating the book. Now, I still stand on this point where I still stand on this opinion that I'm not quite sure if her story is totally true. I don't know what to believe, to be honest, and I'm okay being in the middle and not really knowing. Overall, as a story, I really appreciate it. I think it was a very intriguing tale, and as long as I considered it nonfiction, I thought that it was pretty crazy. And I know that life can be kind of crazy for other people. Life is crazy for all of us, who are we kidding? But yeah, so it's one of those books that I'm not sure if I love or hate it, so that's why it's in this video, and it's my wrap up, because I don't know what else to say on it other than I really enjoyed it. It was really well told, and I'm conflicted on whether it's true or not. Alright, well, thank you guys for watching today's video. I don't know how long this was. I tend to ramble about books, so yeah. If you like content like this, please be sure to like and subscribe, and to comment and let me know below what kind of videos you want to see next, if you like book videos, and of course let me know what kind of books you hated and then maybe in retrospect you actually enjoyed. I'd be really interested to know that. So yeah, without further ado, we're out.